How do you do? Welcome to the Writer's Room. I'm Jane Cleland, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Wendy Corsi Staub. Wendy is the New York Times best-selling author of more than 70 novels. Wendy writes in multiple genres. She writes single-title women's psychological suspense, thrillers, young adult paranormal series, and under the name Wendy Markham, she writes chick lit. Please join me in welcoming Wendy. It's great to have this opportunity to chat about writers, writing, and ideas.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jane. Thanks for having me.
Wendy, you write 5 books a year. I write 1 book a year, and sometimes that's a lot. It's a challenge. How in God's name do you do that?
Well, it's this year I wrote 3, so I'm down to. I was writing different genres, and young adult fiction is shorter. So 2 young adult novels total 1 100,000 word adult novel. So 5. I don't do 500,000 word novels a year. At this point, I'm doing trilogies for my adult publisher Harper, and I have a calendar on my desktop, an electronic calendar. And when I begin a book, if I know I have to write 100,000 words in 3 months usually, because I take about 3 months a year to tour weeks here and there. No, it's not, but I can do it. It's math, not always my strong suit, but I can figure out how many weeks I have to write those many words.
Yeah.
And then I just do
it's
the
like
math, and every
10
Friday,
weeks.
yes, and every Friday I'll put a page number on my Friday. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm supposed to be on page 100. I'm on page 67 of this week's work, and so I've got some serious work to do, and I adjust accordingly as I go. I make sure that I make that deadline.
Yeah. So it's discipline.
It's discipline. It's discipline, and it's knowing that you have to be accountable to a deadline.
Yeah.
You know, every couple of months I have a book to turn in, and I've been doing this for many years.
So it's now a habit.
It's a habit, and it's there's always something I'd rather be doing these days. So it's a matter of starting really early in the morning when I can. I get myself to my desk, to my chair, just like if I were going to an office.
Have you always been a morning person?
Never. I was a morning person until I had children. And when my boys were babies, I would get up for the feeding. It would be 3 or 4 in the morning, and then I'd be wide awake because I'm not good at going back to sleep.
Yeah.
And I'd just stay up and write, and no one could bother me, and the phone couldn't ring. And
Yeah. Which of the multiple genres that you work in is your favorite?
Suspense, absolutely.
Oh, really?
Because when I'm writing it, I feel like I'm in suspense, and I want to know what happens next. Once the characters take hold and the plot takes hold, it sort of carries me along the way I want my readers to be carried along.
Yeah. So that implies that you plot organically, if I can use that word, that you don't do it in advance?
I really don't. I sort of know where I'm going, and I've used this metaphor before. Many writers have. It's like you're setting out on a road trip, and you know where you want to end up, but you're just not sure exactly how to get there. You might make a turn here and there that you didn't see coming.
Interesting. Which one is most difficult for you? Which genre?
I would say romance is most difficult, and I haven't written it in the last 2 years. It's always a nice change of pace, but there's an inevitability with romance, and it's tricky to, you always know there's going to be a happy ending, you know, that these 2 people will fall in love, but you need to make the reader forget that they will by the end somehow, you know, and in real life when 2 people are meant for each other, it's hard to see obstacles that are, you know, it's hard to create them.
That's very interesting. You don't find the same is true in your suspense books, that they know it's going to end up okay?
No, because there is always a twist, sort of, that, I don't know, I feel like it's just more compelling to me. It's not that I don't enjoy writing romance. I think suspense seems to fall into place. Like every plot twist I take leads me to a direction where there's something unexpected.
Yes.
And with romance, there's not as much room for.
Could you apply the same principle?
You probably could. And it's really just my own writing process.
Yeah.
My mind tends to go to dark places,
Yeah.
maybe not to happy places.
Yeah, good to know.
So yeah.
I'll back away
longer. But those things feel very natural to me. Those turns feel much more natural to me.
Yeah. And in romance, you want it to be an obstacle, but you don't want dark.
You can't go dark unless you're writing romantic suspense. I write light, chick lit, sort of fun, funny romantic comedy or romp. So it just, you can't go dark.
So in the young adult paranormal series, that's the Lilydale series, that one's coming to TV.
That one, we're hoping it's coming to TV.
What can you tell us about the process?
It was optioned by Fremantle Entertainment. They do American Idol here in America, and this was to be their first American set drama. Lilydale is a town populated entirely by spiritualists. It's a real place, upstate New York, near where I grew up. Very atmospheric, small Victorian town where everybody in town hangs out a shingle with their paranormal specialty. So we have mediums who are specialize in healing, they specialize in counseling, and so I always just thought that would be the perfect place to set a thriller.
It's a natural, isn't it?
It's a natural. So this is for young adults, and Hollywood grabbed onto this idea right away. It's just, they've been fascinated.
So where are you in that process?
They have a pilot script written, and from what I understand, they hired a different showrunner. It's a process that I'm not really a hands-on part of on a day-to-day basis. They update me every once in a while. I was a part of the pitch meetings. I went out with producers to LA, and that was really fun. I was starstruck. Did all of that, and then once we sold it and turned it over, it's in development. In England, it's
in England.
Fremantle's based in England, in Australia. So the producers and writers are.
Are they going to be using American actors?
I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure. I've had people come up to me and ask me if they could be cast.
That would be fun. Huh? I want to read a tiny excerpt, if I might, from your book, Hell to Pay. And then I have a few questions for you. Okay? This is one sentence. Lush snowflakes fall through jagged holes in what's left of the prison roof, dusting her gray streaked hair and making her shiver despite the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. I mean, wow, you're just a wonderful writer, Wendy.
Oh, thank you.
The sentence is beautifully evocative of mood. Would you say that's a specialty of yours?
I try, and I'm much more aware of that now that the actual process of creating plot and those things are second nature to me now. So I focus these days more on craft than I used to, I think. So I do rework.
What does that mean?
On description and creating a mood and a scene and bringing the reader into that mood or scene, because the other things you sort of do without thinking. So this I focus more on these days. I tend to focus on craft.
When I write my books, I feel like my first draft is laying down plot. And then I go back and add in language and subtlety. Do you work the same way?
I usually do. Do you do a second draft?
I do.
So you do a complete first draft and then...
I revise as I go. But then once it's done, I'll reread it one last time. And I find that I've been too lean. I need to add more description, more emotion.
Right.
Because it's really been about plot.
Right. And you write mysteries as well, so they're intricate. It's the same thing. You have to keep all of your threads woven.
That's right. Traditional mysteries, fair play. So the plot is very important. They're plot driven.
Right.
As opposed to literary fiction where we might say it's character driven.
Exactly.
Our characters matter.
They do matter. And those characters evolve, and that's something that's an ongoing process. As I write, I usually will, I do all my revising as I go. And then when I'm done, because it tends to pick up speed, I feel like I'm careening downhill usually when I'm writing. And I've learned this in my calendar that I create, the first 100 pages take me much longer to write than the last 100 pages. I've done the last 100 pages in a day or two, or a couple of days. And I do go back and rewrite, but the first 100 I slave over.
But let us just bow before you writing 100 pages in a day or two. Oh my God.
Not in the beginning.
I understand.
That's 5.
But so, if you're only doing one draft and when it's done, you are integrating this emotion and this description and this mood as you're writing.
Yes.
That's, I think, a real gift. That's an extra gift.
Thank you. I think I layer it in as I go. It's over here, it's like you're plucking, like things are floating around your head on the outside. I sort of feel like I grab from here and there.
Do you ever find that you've created a character that's wrong, that it's not working for the plot, and you have to go back?
Yes, actually, in my latest book, it's called Hell to Pay. I was going at it from the wrong direction entirely, and I got 200 pages in, and this has never happened before, and it would not pull together. And my friend is a writing professor, and he and I were at a party, and I was brooding that night, and he said, "Why don't we talk it through?" And I said, "I never do that. I never talk my plots through." But we did. We made a diagram, and then he said something that just turned the whole story on his end. Like, why don't you think of it in the opposite way? This character should be, like, maybe she should be doing the opposite thing. I went home the next morning, ripped the entire thing apart, changing that one character, changed the course of the plot, and it wrote itself.
Wow.
That was the only time I've ever really given myself permission to take it apart and go backward.
Yeah, yeah.
So this character was so far along in the wrong direction.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. And I must say, you're a terrible tease.
That's
Hell to Pay, and now, of course, everyone's to read it.
The villain wants the opposite of what she wanted the first time I wrote it.
Okay. How do you avoid duplicating terms? I mean, in that little sentence that I read, lush snowflakes, jagged hole, these are very specific terms.
I have been known to do a search, a very basic tool in my Word document, because I do feel like there are words I turn to sometimes.
Yeah.
We all have our words. Do you have a word that you...
absolutely. Pet favorites.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will do a search. Grim is one word that I tend to use often, and there's no true synonym for grim.
Yeah.
So whenever I finish a book, I will do a search.
For grim.
Take grim out and rewrite those passages.
Yeah, because you can't just replace a word.
You can't just, no.
No.
So I know my...
The excerpt I read, another point about it, is that it's written in the omnipotent voice and the present tense. How do you decide? I mean, these decisions, perspective and point of view, I think are just so key. How do you decide whose story it is?
I tend to have a strong female heroine in every book I write. It's domestic suspense. It's been called Moms in Jeopardy, where the everyday, the mundane becomes suddenly frightening, and where home and hearth, perfect setting for us here. So I tend to write a strong female character. It's always going to be her story, but I go into multiple viewpoints, and multi-generational characters are really important to me. And a strong male, not necessarily the villain.
Or a love interest.
A love interest once in a while. I don't do that very often. Usually a husband, it's family, a lot of times. But I tend to write a lot of young adults too into it. If there's a teenager, because my roots are in YA, I will do a viewpoint character. Teen.
And do you try to keep it balanced? Like if you're switching multiple points of view, can you just have one character, one point of view for 1 minute?
Once in a while I do, especially as the plot heats up, those scenes get shorter and shorter. I am conscious of trying not to flip-flop so much early in the process, early in the book, because I don't want to lose readers or confuse them.
Yes.
So those passages tend to be much longer, with one or two. And once you've met a character through the main character's viewpoint, I will bring them in through their own eyes.
Fascinating. We're going to be right back with Wendy Corsi Staub and her view of one of the age-old questions. Where do ideas come from, and how do you decide which ideas are worthy?